My name is Sophia, I am 32 years old and I live with my husband and daughter in the state of Colorado. At the recent Christmas dinner, right in the middle of a cozy dining room lit by warm lights, with soft music playing and a table full of traditional dishes, my daughter, baby Emma, only 7 months old, was slapped straight across the face by my own sister. A real slap. Hard. Enough to silence the whole room. Caroline, my sister, was standing in front of a camera, in front of the lens of an entire vlog crew filming a perfect family Christmas. She turned to Emma with anger in her eyes and struck her simply because the baby's crying was ruining the audio of the recording. No one reacted. Not a single relative stood up. My mother looked down at her plate. My father pretended to scroll his phone. They fell silent as if it were normal. But Ethan, my husband, a former military investigative officer, stood up, stared at Caroline and said in a voice cold as steel, "Caroline, you just hit my child. This is evidence of abuse. You will not get away with this." Those words cut through the false atmosphere that had settled over my family like a blade. Have you ever witnessed a family member hurt your child while everyone else around you pretended nothing happened? If it were you, what would you do? Protect your child or preserve what people call family peace? Leave a comment below, hit like if you feel this is unacceptable. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to hear the rest of the story, because what happened after that dinner was far scarier. I still remember the feeling when Emma's cheek flushed red after the slap, as if my own skin had been scorched. The room's air felt suffocatingly silent. The clinking of cutlery stopped. The lights Caroline had painstakingly set up for her perfect family dinner kept flashing as if they hadn't seen a thing. Emma let out a cry. Not the kind of whimpering of an infant, but a shattered, erupting wail, terrified, in pain and helpless. I lunged forward and took her out of the high chair I had carefully brought from home. Her tiny hands clung to my neck, trembling. "Caroline, you just hit my child. This is evidence of abuse. You will not get away with this." Ethan's voice rang out. He didn't have to raise it, yet everyone sat up straight. I had never seen that look in his eyes before. Steady, cold, with no room for leniency. Caroline blinked repeatedly. She hadn't even fully withdrawn her hand, as if she herself were surprised by what she had done. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, sharp and edged with panic. "It was just a light smack." She kept crying and ruining the shot. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I stood motionless. "My child is not a prop." "A light smack." Ethan emphasized each word as he stepped slowly toward her. "A slap hard enough to make a baby scream in terror. That's a light smack?" My parents still had not spoken. My mother seemed frozen while my father kept his head bowed over his plate. I turned Emma so I could check her cheek. A handprint was already forming, red and swollen. Caroline turned her camera back toward herself, stammering, "Mom, Dad, say something." "I didn't mean it." My mother finally spoke, her voice barely a breeze. "Sophia, maybe you're overreacting." She just swung her arm a little. I looked at her. I had no patience left for gentleness. "Are you defending your daughter hitting a 7-month-old baby just because she cried?" "Sweetheart, Christmas is a time for the family to gather." Ethan cut in. "And no family gathering is worth trading for a child's safety." Caroline shouted, "This is all because of your oversensitivity." Emma wouldn't stop crying. "I just wanted things to be perfect for the project." I let out a laugh. Not a happy laugh, but the kind that comes when someone's endurance has been exceeded. Perfect? Perfect is making the whole family sit like statues for 3 hours just to get a pretty shot for your YouTube channel? Is perfect controlling people with scripted lines and camera angles, even demanding that a baby's cries be just the right amount of emotion? Is that your idea of perfect, Caroline? She fell silent. Ethan stepped closer to the table, bending down to gather our things. The blanket, the bottle, the toys that had been scattered on the floor. "We're leaving," he said. Caroline moved to block our way. "You can't turn this into a family scandal. If this gets out, you'll ruin everything. You'll cost me my deals. You hit my child. In front of a camera. In front of everyone here," Ethan said calmly. He didn't shout, but his voice made Caroline take a step back. "If you were worried about losing contracts, maybe you should have thought before you raised your hand." I turned to my parents one last time. "If you want to stay silent, go ahead. But I won't." I will not let anyone, not even my own sister, treat my daughter like a decoration. I picked up Emma and hurried out of the room heavy with the smell of turkey and deceit. Ethan followed. As we reached the door, my mother called after us, "Sophia, you're destroying the family over something small." I did not look back. Ethan opened the car door, took Emma, and gently strapped her into the car seat. The baby had stopped crying, only hiccuping and occasionally sucking on her thumb. We drove away from that house in silence. No one saw us off. There was no remorse. I looked out the window. The neighboring houses were lit with Christmas lights. Families were gathered for dinner, laughing and talking warmly. I had once believed I would have that too. But everything melted away like early season snow under bright lights. In the car, Ethan squeezed my hand. "We will not let this be swept away like the old things. I promise." I nodded faintly, saying nothing. Part of me was not surprised by my parents' reaction. I had been the child who was always asked to give in. The one who was not allowed to speak up, not allowed to be a bother, not allowed to be too sensitive. Caroline had always been the princess. Whatever she wanted, she got. Every action had a reason to be excused. But now I am a mother. And Emma is my whole world. This story will not end with a perfunctory apology or a token hug. I had left that house. Yet the question kept echoing in my head. Why didn't anyone stand up? No one, except Ethan. I remembered a short conversation with my mother back in high school. Caroline shoved me to the ground because I accidentally ruined the dress she wanted for prom. I ran crying to my mother. Her response was, "Come on, dear, your sister is just stressed. You should be the bigger person." I had learned to be brushed aside. But Emma will not be like the child I once was. We arrived home just after 9 p.m. I did not take off my coat. I sat on the sofa with Emma in my arms, the warm lamp light falling on her fine hair. Ethan made me a cup of hot tea. He said nothing more and simply sat beside me. That silence was more comforting than any words. I stroked Emma's cheek. The redness was fading, but in my heart it remained deeply stamped. Not just Caroline's handprint, but the mark of a whole system of cover-ups, silence, and emotional dismissal. I had lived in that system all my childhood. Emma will not. I will not let my child live in that darkness for a single second more. Then I took out my phone and began to write. Line by line, detail by detail, I recorded the Christmas dinner. The slap. The silence. I will not let this story fade into oblivion. Not again. I woke up just after 5 a.m., my head still buzzing from the echoes of the previous night. Outside, snow was drifting over the wooden fence in the backyard. Inside, Emma slept peacefully in her bassinet, her cheeks still a little flushed with fatigue. I watched her and wondered whether she would remember what happened, or whether it would remain with me, like so many other memories I had swallowed and hidden for decades. I poured coffee and stood in the kitchen, watching the morning light come through the window. Ethan had woken before me and was typing on his laptop in the study. He was quiet after everything. That didn't mean he cared any less. While my coffee sat untouched, my phone rang. It was my mother. I didn't pick up. I let it ring until it stopped. It rang again. Still my mother. I breathed deeply and answered. "Are you up?" "Yes." "How's baby Emma? Is she okay?" "Do you mean okay after my sister slapped her? Or okay after everyone in our family sat stone-faced and watched her cry?" My mother's voice faltered for a beat. "Sweetheart, don't be harsh. Caroline has been under a lot of stress for months. This project means everything to her." She didn't mean it. Didn't mean it? I let out a dry laugh. "Did you see Emma's face? Did you hear her scream? Or were you too busy thinking about how bright the camera lights needed to be for the next shot?" "Look, I don't want to fight. Families should keep the peace." Those words, each one a thorn. How many times had I heard them in my life? I remembered in 5th grade when Caroline knocked paint onto my school art project the night before it was due. I ran home crying and my mother said, "Be quiet, don't ruin the family mood." When I was 17, Caroline used my credit card without asking. When I confronted her, my mother said, "You should be understanding. Your sister is upset about a breakup." I learned to be silent to be loved, or at least to avoid being shunned. But now I have a child and I cannot let Emma grow up in that counterfeit peace. "Mom," I said slowly, "I am not the child who will sit still while my sister does whatever she wants. And I will not let Emma become another version of me, silenced so others can remain comfortable. But you can't throw blood relatives away over one moment of anger. Caroline isn't a bad person. I cut her off. Whether she's a bad person is not the point. The point is she hit my daughter. And you, Dad, and everyone else, what did you do? I didn't wait for an answer. I ended the call, placed the phone on the table, and felt empty. Ethan came out of the study, saw my face pale, and paused before asking softly, "Your mother call?" I nodded. And, "Same as before," I said, sitting down and touching the now cool coffee. "They don't see it as a big deal. Mom says I'm overreacting. I'm just so tired." Ethan sat across from me, his expression heavy with thought. "Sophia, you are not wrong. And I wasn't wrong to stand up in front of everyone. I just wish others could understand that too." I was silent, my fingers tracing the rim of my cup. A thought came, clear as a knock at the door. Have you ever thought that through my childhood things like this happened and I didn't realize they were wrong? Ethan tilted his head, watching me. I used to think I had to endure it. That to be loved you had to keep quiet. That a little girl must give way to an older sister. That being hurt was the price to pay so the family could stay peaceful. "And what do you see now?" he asked. "I see that I was deceived." Ethan said nothing more. He simply reached across the table, took my hand, and squeezed gently. I looked at Emma sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. My daughter's tiny face made my heart ache. I knew she would not remember last night. But I would not forget. And I did not want to forget. Because something inside me had broken. And that broken place opened up an emotion I had never fully felt before. Anger. Not the explosive, fleeting kind, but a quiet, enduring anger. The kind that arises when you realize you were forced to accept wrongs for a long stretch of your life and told it was right. I stood and fetched my notebook. "Babe," I said as I flipped to a blank page. "I need to write it all down. Everything. Memories. Words. Behaviors. I don't want to forget a single detail. I need to know exactly how it happened." Ethan nodded. "I'll help. We're not going to let this be swallowed by silence any longer." When I began to write the first lines, my hand trembled slightly. Not from fear, but because something inside me was shifting, like ice beginning to crack. I remembered my father's look last night. He did not look at me. He did not look at Emma. He stared at his plate of cold turkey. My father, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who once said, "I will always protect you," did not say a word when his granddaughter was struck. No one in my family spoke. Perhaps in my family, silence had always been the preferred option. But now I could not live one more day inside that kind of silence. Not for me. For Emma. I sat at the cold dining table, the Christmas tree lights blinking offhandedly behind me. Emma slept soundly in my arms, her small face pressed against my chest. The red mark on her cheek had faded but remained etched in my heart like an unhealed cut. Ethan sat opposite, quietly pouring me another cup of coffee. His voice was low and steady. "We need to record everything. Every detail. I don't believe this was a one-off. Caroline is not as simple as you think." I looked at him, hesitating. "Are you talking about recording?" He nodded. "Video, messages, social media. Anything that can show the truth." "Did you see the look on Caroline's face when she left?" She showed no remorse. She knew she was protected. I was silent. My mother's words kept replaying in my head. "Your sister is just stressed." Just like when Caroline ruined the painting I planned to submit and my mother said, "Oh, don't make a fuss." I was always the one expected to take it. Ethan touched my hand lightly. "Sophia, this is not old history anymore. This is our daughter. If you stay silent, this will happen again." I nodded softly. "I understand. I will not let Emma grow up like I did." We spent that entire evening combing through every app, every group chat, every Instagram story Caroline had posted since we arrived at my parents' house. And then I saw it. A 15-second Instagram story from Caroline, shot from the corner of the living room, where the incident occurred, but cut just before the moment she slapped Emma. Caption read, "Every family has tense moments. Being a parent is hard, but being a YouTuber is even harder. Winking face #Christmas chaos #Emma needs chill." My throat tightened. Below it, hundreds of comments. "That baby's so bratty, crying nonstop. Who could take it? Caroline handled it well. Staying calm when someone ruins your shoot is impressive. Ugh, trying to vlog and a baby messes it up. I'd lose my temper too. I slid my finger off the screen, my heart pounding. Ethan, she's twisting everything. She's making my daughter the cause and me the over-emotional mother. Ethan took the phone, his face darkened. She's weaving a whole narrative. Wait, tomorrow she'll post a polished vlog and you'll be labeled the overly sensitive mom who can't control her emotions. I sank into the chair. I was far too used to being misunderstood. The feeling of standing in a room full of judging eyes, where no one truly listens and everyone waits for you to slip up so they can brand you a troublemaker. I had grown up in that atmosphere. But now it's about Emma. I couldn't let my child grow up under those assumptions. Ethan said, his voice firm as if interrogating a suspect. I want you to write down everything you remember. Every line, every expression, including how people reacted. And start saving everything she posts from now on. I nodded. On my laptop I began to type. Fresh memories flashed like quick snapshots. My mother pulling me aside saying we shouldn't stir things up. My father tucking his napkin away without meeting my eye. Caroline standing in the living room like an actress after a performance. I saved that story in the comments. An hour later, a notification popped up. Caroline had posted a new video on perfect family life. The title read, Christmas and the Lessons of Motherhood. When your family won't support your vlogging. I opened it. She sat in front of the camera under soft lights, looking slightly tired. Exactly the sort of vulnerable posture that invites sympathy. There are times, Caroline said in a warm, measured voice, when you have to choose between career and family. I love my niece, but in that moment the non-stop crying nearly drove me insane. I'm not proud of my reaction, but I'm only human. I was stunned. She never apologized. She never admitted she raised her hand. She made no mention of Ethan or being asked to leave the dinner. She framed the whole thing as an aunt exhausted making a mistake and the mother me overreacting. And just as Ethan predicted, the comments flooded with support. You're so strong, don't blame yourself. People who don't understand creative work shouldn't judge. That baby needs discipline, not constant coddling. My hands trembled. A wave of anger rose in my chest. Ethan placed his hand on my shoulder. Don't let anger control you. Let the truth do the work. I took a deep breath and looked at him. So what do we do? He was silent for a moment, then said as if he'd been calculating for some time. Starting with this video, keep a record of everything Caroline twists. Cross-check it with what actually happened. If necessary, we'll record a statement from our side. I frowned. You mean, a public rebuttal? Ethan nodded. Not an attack. Just a way for people to see what she doesn't want them to see. I looked down at my daughter, her little lips slightly parted in sleep. No child should grow up surrounded by lies and performance just because someone wants more views. I turned to Ethan. I'll do it. Not to defend myself, but to protect Emma. He smiled. And you're not alone. I opened my notes app and titled it in big letters. The Truth About the Perfect Family Christmas. Under it I wrote the first line. December 24th, 5:52 p.m. Caroline slapped Emma in front of 13 relatives. No one spoke up. And then I began to write. Not from fear, but from the conviction that no matter how much the truth is twisted, if you hold it, it will not disappear. Under the dim yellow light from the living room window, I sat motionless with my phone in hand, my grip trembling. A message from my mother glowed on the screen. Don't blow this out of proportion. Your sister is just stressed. If you keep on like this, you'll tear the family apart. Below it, an icon of a sad face and a broken heart. I didn't reply. My chest felt heavy not because of that text, but because my mother's voice still echoed in my head. That familiar, soothing, borderline sentimental tone that had blurred the line between love and control throughout my childhood. When I was a child, I would cry when Caroline scolded me unfairly or grabbed my toys, and my mother always whispered, "Big sisters have to be indulged. Don't embarrass your mother." Almost immediately the phone rang again. The caller ID showed Dad Henry. I hadn't planned to pick up, but Ethan sat beside me, his eyes worried, and squeezed my hand before nodding. I tapped the answer button. He just wanted to say one thing. Not to scold, Ethan mouthed. His voice sounded oddly unsure, different from his usual sternness. Yes, I'm listening, I said. Your mother is very worried. She's been sighing all day. Sophia, Your father understands you and Ethan are upset, but do you need to make such a big deal out of last night? I swallowed hard. My daughter was slapped. Do you think that's making a big deal, sir? That. Caroline didn't mean to. Everyone was tense. Babies cry sometimes. Ethan reacted like a military man making a scene in the house. Families don't need that kind of formality. I closed my eyes. My father's words landed like needles across the cracks I thought had long since sealed. The way he described Ethan, the only person who stood up to protect his child, made my throat tighten. Do you know why I've always been quiet whenever Caroline blamed or pushed me? I asked. You're digging into the past again? I paused, then spoke more slowly and colder than I had intended. Because my parents always made me feel that if I spoke up, I'd be the one who broke the family. I was the overly sensitive one, the troublemaker. While Caroline, whatever she did was always she's just stressed. There was silence on the other end of the line. Silence like the hundreds of times I cried because Caroline snapped my grandmother's hair clip. Silence like the time I had to clear the whole living room for Thanksgiving while my sister filmed her decoration vlog, and my mother said, "You're doing this to help your sister shine, don't be petty." I heard him sigh, then the click of the call ending. No reply. Ethan didn't ask. He simply drew me close and put his hand on my shoulder. From the kitchen, the kettle hissed softly. Emma played with a wooden block in the corner. Her cheek still bore the faint red line from yesterday's slap. I walked over and smoothed her hair. You okay, Em? The little girl looked at me, her eyes innocent but somehow wary. I realized I was seeing my own childhood reflected back at me. That child had once been cautious like that after every scolding, every time she was forced to apologize for embarrassing the family. That night I opened my laptop and began to type. Ethan stood behind me, set a cup of tea down beside me and whispered, "Write it all down. If you don't write it, they will keep writing the story for you." I opened a blank document and recorded everything from the start. From the moment we walked into the house in Dallas, to Caroline slapping Emma, to the things my mother and father said, and even the heavy silences that pressed down on my chest like stone. I didn't plan to publish anything. Not yet. But I needed a record. A place to hold the truth before it could be twisted by sweet-sounding voices and YouTube lenses. The next morning my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Your sister just called crying. What did you do to make her lose a deal with Clean Mom Brands? They're threatening to withdraw sponsorship over rumors of attacking a child. Think about it. Do you regret what you did?" I froze. I hadn't told anyone except Ethan. I hadn't reached out to any third party. But apparently someone at the dinner, maybe a guest, maybe a stranger who witnessed it, had said something on social media. I opened TikTok. A short clip was circulating. The face wasn't clear, but it was unmistakably from that Christmas night. A child's cries, glaring camera lights, and someone shouting, "Why did she hit the baby?" Comments split in two. Half defended Caroline, saying the clip didn't prove anything. The other half questioned how a model mother could behave that way in front of a camera. I sat still, my mind tangled. Not because I worried for Caroline, but because of my mother, the woman who had just texted me, who didn't ask if her daughter was okay, didn't ask how Emma was, but only cared about Caroline's losses. I texted back, "I didn't do anything. But it seems the truth is spreading on its own." A minute later my mother called. I didn't pick up. I just looked out the window at the pale Dallas morning. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel compelled to preserve the family's peace by sacrificing the truth. Ethan came in and gently rested his hand on my shoulder. "They're angry," he said. "But they're angry because you won't stay quiet. Do you see, Sophia? Silence protects no one. It only makes the people who hurt others feel safer." I didn't answer. I placed my hands on the keyboard and kept recording every word, every moment, so that later if anyone asked why I chose to protect my child instead of keeping the family peace, I could answer with this story. I was sitting there cataloging details, Emma playing in her bassinet with a little rattle making a soft chime. The house was unusually quiet. The wind whistled outside through the eaves. Just then the phone rang. The screen showed a familiar name, Margaret. I was surprised. Aunt Margaret is my mother's cousin, now in her 70s, living in rural Oklahoma. We rarely spoke, partly because of distance, partly because she's a quiet woman who seldom intrudes in family matters. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Sophia, are you free?" Her voice was hoarse, slow, but each word carried certainty. "Yes, I'm here, Aunt." There was a short silence, then she spoke as if she had waited a long time to say this. "Sophia, I'm calling because I need to tell you something important. I can't stay silent anymore. Baby Emma, she isn't the first child Caroline has struck." I went numb. The words hit me like a bucket of cold water. I could hear my heart pounding. My hands tightened around the phone. "What did you say?" I asked. Margaret sighed. "Caroline," her hitting cousins twisting little kids' hands, pushing them down. "It's happened many times. But Henry and Linda always covered for her. They treated her like a little queen while other children were dismissed as troublemakers. Sophia, you've seen it with your own eyes." I reeled. Fragments of memory surged back. When I was 10 at a Thanksgiving family gathering, my cousin Brian, then 6, suddenly rolled on the floor crying, clutching his arm. Caroline had been standing nearby, her face flushed, then she stepped back. I remember the boy's terrified eyes looking at her. When the adults rushed over, my mother wrapped Brian in her arms and soothed him, saying he had slipped. Caroline stood silent, her lips pressed together. At the time I thought maybe I had imagined it. Now Margaret confirmed something I had never dared to believe. "And why didn't anyone speak up then?" I asked. Margaret paused, her voice heavy. "I tried. But Henry shut me down. He said, 'Caroline's just a little hot-headed,' and stared at me like he was warning me. Linda cried out, 'Don't besmirch my daughter's name.' And everyone else stayed quiet. Sophia, silence is what fed this monster." I trembled. "What about the time she pushed someone down the stairs?" "About 15 years ago, another cousin, 8 years old at the time, was playing in the yard when Caroline shoved her down the concrete steps. She broke her arm. Henry rushed to the hospital and called it an accident while playing. Nobody dared object. The girl cried all night. Caroline was soothed with ice cream and presents. Sophia, you must understand. Emma's case is not an isolated event. It's the result of years of tolerance." I bit my lip, my eyes blurred. A mix of fury and grief ran up my spine. All those years I had been there, too small, too obedient, forced to believe that Caroline was just a hot-headed older sister. It turned out the truth had been hidden very carefully. "Aunt Margaret, why are you only telling me now?" I asked, voice tight. On the other end she gave a sad laugh. "Because in the past I felt bound. I depended on family, I feared being shunned, losing that connection. But today, seeing Emma hurt, I cannot remain silent. I refuse to let another child follow the path we let happen. Every child deserves protection." I was stunned, my throat burning. Her words were both a knife and an illumination. I whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for telling me." Margaret continued, "Don't expect Henry or Linda to change. They've chosen to protect Caroline long ago. But you are different. You have Ethan, you have Emma. Do what I and many others did not dare to do." When I hung up, my hands were still shaking. Ethan sat at the table watching me. I told him everything Margaret had said. He listened in silence, then leaned back and said in a low voice, "I suspected. But hearing confirmation from family, it's different. Sophia, this is what you need. A witness." I covered my face, feeling as though the world around me had collapsed another layer. "Do you understand? It turns out I grew up in a family where violence was justified and the truth buried. I believed them. I thought I was too sensitive," I said. Ethan came over and put his arm around my shoulders. "You're not overly sensitive. You're the victim of gaslighting for years. But you see clearly now. I swear we won't let Emma suffer the same way." I looked at him, tears streaming down. Emma was in the bassinet, laughing at the musical toy. Seeing her both hurt and strengthened my resolve. I sat back down, opened my notes file and added a new heading, Margaret's account. Then I typed every word she'd told me. Old wounds were no longer vague memories. They became evidence. A tide of hurt rose inside me, mixed with a new clarity. I had not imagined things. I was not too sensitive. I had seen and heard, and now I had a relative willing to stand with me. Outside the window, snowflakes drifted. I sat motionless, my hands still on the keyboard, and a single thought rang clearly. It was time to tear down my family's wall of silence. I was still fumbling with my notes when Ethan called from the basement, his voice low and full of surprise. "Sophia, can you come down?" I found something. I hugged Emma and patted down the creaky wooden steps. Our basement held boxes of old family things, mostly brought over when my grandfather passed. Ethan was crouched by an old darkwood cabinet, its door sticking, holding a small tin box dusted with grime. He handed it to me. Inside were a few black and white photos, some old notebooks, and a silver USB drive with scuffed edges. I think you should see this, Ethan said, his face serious. We went upstairs to the living room. I placed Emma back in her bassinet and sat beside Ethan as he plugged the USB into the computer. Files populated the screen. Video files dated more than 20 years ago. My hands trembled as I opened a file labeled Thanksgiving under 2003. The footage was grainy and shaky, but it clearly showed my grandfather's living room. The large family gathered around a long table, a turkey in the center. A familiar voice, my grandfather's, chuckled, listing the dishes. I froze. I hadn't expected to hear his voice again after all these years. The camera panned, catching Caroline at about 14, playing with younger cousins. Suddenly she shoved a little boy of about 6. He rolled down the adjacent steps. A cry sliced through the room. The boy wailed, clutching his arm. In the video my mother rushed over, but not to scold Caroline. She held the boy, soothing him, and turned to my grandfather saying quickly, "It was just an accident. He must have slipped." My father stood behind, looked straight at the camera, and signaled to stop recording. His voice was firm. "Stop filming. No one is to bring this up again." The image cut out. I sat frozen. The room was deathly silent except for my pounding heart. "Ethan," I managed, voice choking. "Do you see? They've been doing this for years." He nodded and gripped my shoulder. "This is the proof. It's not just Margaret's word. It's not just your foggy memory. It's all recorded." Tears welled up. In that footage I could see the pattern. Caroline caused harm and my parents immediately covered it up, calling it an accident and forcing everyone to be silent. My grandfather, the only one who had the courage to preserve the footage, had hidden it on this USB as if waiting for someone someday to face the truth. I reached out and touched the screen where the boy's cries played. I thought I had misremembered, that I was imagining things. "But it's all true," I said. Ethan pulled a chair close so I could rest my head on his shoulder. "You did not imagine it. You grew up where the truth was twisted to protect one person. Now you have proof. You're not the child who must be silenced anymore." I wiped my eyes and looked at the USB. A sharp thought came. This was not only evidence of Caroline's actions but an indictment of my parents, people who chose concealment over protection. I opened a few more files. There were birthday videos and Christmas footage. In one clip Caroline yelled at a little girl and squeezed her arm so hard the child cried. As if on cue, my mother ran in, scooped the girl up, and smiled awkwardly at the guest, saying, "Kids will be rough sometimes, just play too hard." My father patted Caroline's shoulder and whispered something that made her laugh. I clenched my fist. The vague memories of gatherings where I saw tears and heard cries were now confirmed by living images. No one could call me overly sensitive anymore. No one could deny it. I sat up straight and took a deep breath. "Ethan, we have to preserve this carefully. This could be the thing they cannot deny." He nodded. "I'll make multiple copies. And put one in a safe deposit box at the bank. No one can take it." Emma began to cry in her bassinet. I picked her up and held her tight. Looking at her small face, I whispered, "I promise you, you will not grow up in the same darkness I did." In that moment I felt a clear shift inside me, from a victim of gaslighting to someone who held the truth. I knew the road ahead would bring more confrontations, but at least now I had light in my hands. Ethan stood and laid his hand on my shoulder. "Sophia, you're not alone. Grandpa left this for you as a kind of protection. Now it's up to you to decide what to do with it." I looked at the USB glinting under the desk lamp and felt a deep resolve stir. All the past silences finally had a voice. I would not let it be buried again. I had never imagined organizing a meeting like this myself. Not a birthday or holiday gathering, but a meeting to expose a truth buried for decades. Our little house wasn't large, but Ethan arranged everything neatly. Chairs circled the living room. A large monitor hooked to the laptop sat in the middle. My hands shook as I texted each relative, the message concise: "Please come. I need the family to witness something important." That afternoon snow fell heavily in the yard. cars creaked in. My mother arrived first, bundled in a heavy coat, her lips pressed tight. My father followed, his face somber. Caroline arrived later, red lipstick, high heels, eyes sharp. She glanced me up and down and then turned away, as if she were walking into an interview rather than a family meeting. I inhaled, hugged Emma to my chest. She nuzzled my shoulder, her tiny hands clutching my shirt. Ethan stood beside me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder, lending strength. I began. Thank you all for coming. I won't beat around the bush. There's a truth our family has buried for too long. Today, I need everyone to look at it straight. I plugged in the USB and hit play. The screen filled with grainy footage from that Thanksgiving 20 years ago. The room fell utterly silent except for the soft hum of speakers. There was Caroline, about 14, shoving a small child who tumbled down the steps. A scream pierced the scene. Then my mother's voice. It was just an accident. My father appeared and raised his hand, saying, "No one is to bring this up again." When the clip ended, the room was stone silent. No one dared move. Margaret sat in a nearby chair, shaking her head, eyes rimmed with red. A few relatives covered their mouths, stunned. Caroline broke the silence. She sprang up, voice high and shrill. "This is ridiculous. You dug up this old tape to ruin me? Sophia, how jealous do you have to be to do something like this?" I held Emma tighter and forced myself to stay calm. "This isn't about jealousy. This is the truth." Caroline screamed, "That's the past. Who cares what happened 20 years ago? People will just think you're bitter about my success." Ethan stepped forward, his voice clear, low, and firm. "No, Caroline. This is not the past. Because just 2 days ago, you slapped baby Emma, a child not yet 1 year old." All eyes swung to Caroline. She went pale, her lips trembling before she managed a brittle laugh. "You're making things up. The baby was crying. I only touched her." Ethan cut in, his eyes hard as flint. "I saw it. And so did the whole room. If necessary, I can produce 13 witnesses." My mother hurried to interrupt, voice shaking. "Sophia, Ethan, stop. It's over. Our family can't keep digging up the past. Caroline has a career, a reputation." I turned to my mother, fire in my eyes. "Mom, for years you have chosen to protect Caroline even when she hurt others. Even when she hurt my daughter. Have you ever thought about Emma?" My father slammed his hand down on the arm of his chair, his tone severe. "You're making a scene. Don't make the family a laughingstock." I let out a bitter laugh. "Dad, our family has been a laughingstock for a long time. When parents watch a child get hit and call it keeping the peace, this family loses its decency." Margaret spoke up, her voice hoarse. "Sophia's right. I witnessed Caroline do many terrible things to the children in this family. And I stayed silent out of fear. But not today." Caroline spun on Margaret. "You're old and forgetful. Who believes you?" Margaret rose, her hand trembling on the table. "I remember every cry, every tear. Today I am ashamed I didn't protect them. But I will not let Emma fall into the same trap." The tension in the room was suffocating. My mother pressed her hand to her forehead. My father stared at me with a mix of anger and confusion. Caroline remained, face contorted with rage. I inhaled and tightened my hold on Emma. My voice wavered but was resolute. "This is not an attempt to destroy the family. It's an attempt to save what remains. If you continue to stay silent, how many more children will suffer?" Ethan faced the room and spoke decisively. "From now on, anyone who defends or covers for Caroline is complicit in violence. We will not let this happen again." The room went quiet again, but no longer with denial. It was the silence of revealed truth. There was nowhere left to hide. After the confrontation, the family scattered. I heard Caroline's heels pound across the yard, her curses trailing behind her. A few days later, an envelope arrived with the logo of a Dallas law firm. Inside was a long letter, coldly worded. "Our client is Caroline Turner demands that Ms. Sophia cease all defamatory statements immediately. If you continue, we will sue for defamation, reputational harm, and financial damages." My hands trembled as I read it. Ethan took the stack, scanned it, and set it down, his face dark but not panicked. "This is intimidation. They think you'll be scared into silence. But Sophia, we have evidence." I hesitated. "But you know Caroline. She has money, sponsors, a PR team. And we have the truth, Ethan interrupted firmly. And I have a few old friends from the military who now work in legal organizations that protect children. They won't let Caroline hide violent behavior behind lawsuits. That very night, Ethan called Tom Harris, a former colleague now working as an attorney specializing in child abuse cases. I heard Tom's warm, steady voice on the line. Sophia, you are not alone. What we need is a solid file. Evidence, witnesses, images. If Caroline wants to take this to court, we'll go all the way. Those words eased my chest a little. I began to gather everything. My grandfather's USB footage, my detailed notes, Caroline's Instagram story, Margaret's statement, and the photo of Emma's red cheek I had taken that night. I organized each document carefully into a blue folder. I never thought I would be preparing a plaintiff's file, but a firm resolve rose in me. While I was occupied, Caroline did not stay quiet. She appeared again and again on YouTube with sensational titles. When your sister tries to ruin your career, betrayed by family, the pain no one understands. In the videos, she sat in an elegant living room, makeup flawless, voice trembling. I only wanted the family together to share Christmas, she said. But Sophia, my sister, has always resented me. Now she's fabricating that I harmed the baby. I could not believe the comments beneath her videos. Poor Caroline, don't let your nasty sister drag you down. Stay strong, you're our inspiration. Clearly jealousy. Her sister wants attention by smearing her. My anger choked me, but Ethan placed his hand on my shoulder and said calmly, "Let her speak. The more she speaks, the more contradictions she reveals. We don't need pretty words, we need the truth." The next day, Tom Harris came to our house. He sat at the table and opened the file we had prepared. He reviewed each photo and video. When he watched the USB footage, he nodded. "This is key. It proves this isn't an isolated incident but a pattern of cover-ups spanning decades. A court can't ignore it." I hesitated. What if public opinion turns against us? Caroline has hundreds of thousands of followers. They blindly believe her. Tom looked at me steady. "Sophia, public opinion can be swayed. But the law isn't driven by emotion. It's driven by evidence. Leave the legal part to me. If you want, speak on your own platform, not to attack but to tell your story." Ethan chimed in, "I think Sophia should do that. Don't let Caroline monopolize the narrative." I was quiet for a long while. My mother's voice echoed, "Don't destroy the family." But I looked at Emma, her clear eyes waiting for me to protect her. I took a deep breath. "All right, I'll speak. But I'll only tell the truth." That night I shot my first video. No professional lights, no fancy makeup. Just me with Emma sleeping nearby, my voice shaky but honest. "I'm Sophia. You may have heard another side from my sister, Caroline. Tonight I want to tell what actually happened." I recounted the Christmas dinner, the slap, the silence that followed. I showed the photo of Emma's red cheek, Margaret's testimony, and the USB footage. I added no harsh commentary. I let people see the facts and decide. Ethan sat behind the camera, his eyes encouraging me. When I turned the camera off, my hands trembled so hard I had to put them in my lap to steady them. "You did great," Ethan whispered. "You spoke from your heart." 2 days later, the video spread. The views weren't as many as Caroline's, but they were enough to raise questions. Comments began to divide. "She seems sincere. I believe Sophia. If there's proof, why isn't Caroline addressing the USB? Maybe we trusted the wrong person all along." Caroline responded immediately with another tearful video, calling me a poisonous betrayer. But this time more people were speaking up in my defense. "This is just the beginning," Tom said as he reviewed the responses. "Stay firm. This fight is in the courtroom and in the media. You're regaining balance." I looked out the window at the white snow. Fear hadn't vanished, but a fiercer flame had lit inside me. I was no longer the one forced into silence. I had started to speak and I would not stop. One weekend morning, while I was feeding Emma porridge in the kitchen, the phone rang. The caller ID showed a Los Angeles area code. I hesitated for a moment but answered. "Hello, is this Sophia?" a man's voice asked, polite, a little hurried. "Yes, this is she." "Who's calling?" "I'm Richard Coleman, a television producer. We haven't met, but I need to speak with you privately about something regarding Caroline Turner." At the sound of my sister's name, my chest dropped. I moved quickly to the living room, handed Emma to Ethan, and signaled for him to watch her while I went into the study. I'm listening. Richard sighed, his voice lowering. Yes. Sophia, I'm the person who negotiated with Caroline about a reality show centered on the perfect family. She sent us some Christmas footage as demo material. But, in the raw footage my team kept, there's a scene I think you should know about. I've watched it over and over and I can't ignore it. Blood rushed to my face. You mean? Yes. The scene of Caroline slapping your daughter. I froze. The room spun for a moment and I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. Are you sure? That clip is still in the archive? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm sure. We keep raw files for reference. When the team edits material to send to the network, that moment was cut out. But the original is still intact. Richard paused, then continued, I'm not calling to negotiate rights or anything. I just felt, if a woman can strike a child like that and still present herself as a model family figure to the public, the truth needs to be exposed. I squeezed the phone and tears sprang to my eyes. My voice was hoarse. Could you share that footage with me? I don't want anything except the truth. Richard answered quickly, I'll send it through your lawyer, Tom Harris. That will be the legal and safest way. I don't want to be accused of leaking material. But rest assured, Sophia, this evidence cannot be denied. I whispered my thanks and then sat very still for a long time after the call ended. Ethan came in and found me motionless. He frowned. Who called? I looked up, tears still on my cheeks. A TV producer. He had been negotiating with Caroline. He said, the raw footage still contains the moment she slapped Emma. Ethan froze and then crossed the room, pulling me into a tight hug. Oh my God. Sophia, this means we have direct evidence. No more excuses. I rested my head against his chest and felt his heart pounding. In that instant I felt both relief and pain. Relief that the truth had finally been confirmed, pain because that scene would now exist on video as permanent proof that my child had been harmed. That afternoon Tom Harris called us. His voice was excited. I just received a copy from Richard. Sophia, this is the strongest evidence we could have. It not only bolsters our case, it completely dismantles any lies Caroline might tell. I asked softly, have you seen it? Yes. The footage is clear. There's no way to reframe it as a light touch or an accidental brush. And even more important, the audio captures Ethan shouting afterward, Caroline, you just hit my child. That's a vivid, undeniable record. I shivered and felt a chill down my spine. That image had haunted my nights. Now it was captured on Caroline's own footage. The same footage she assumed she could use to polish her public image. Ethan tightened his grip on my hand, his eyes steady. See, Sophia? Her greed and arrogance dug her own hole. The next day Tom came to our house. He placed the small USB drive on the table between us, his face serious. We're going to submit this to the court. But first I want you both to view it so you're prepared. I nodded. Ethan sat beside me and held my hand as the screen lit up. The familiar scene played. The living room bright with lights, a table dressed with a red cloth, the Christmas tree sparkling behind. Emma began to cry. Caroline turned, frowning, raised her hand and the slap landed. Emma's cheek flushed red. The child screamed. I lunged to pick her up. Ethan's voice rang out firm. Caroline, you just hit my child. I turned my face away and sobbed. Ethan wrapped his arms around me while Tom slowly shut off the screen. I'm sorry you had to see that again. But now you have seen it. With this, no jury can side with Caroline. I wiped my tears, drew a long breath and steadied myself. Thank you, Tom. Thanks to you and Richard, the truth won't stay buried. Tom looked at me gravely. Sophia, prepare yourself for a fierce battle. Caroline won't sit quietly. She may fabricate, she may attack you in the media. But remember, you hold the one thing no one can take away, real evidence. Ethan nodded. We're ready. That night, after placing Emma in her bassinet, I watched her sleep, her lips curved as if in a dream. I whispered, my daughter, I will protect you. No matter the power or fame someone has, no one can touch you like that again. The warm lamp light fell over the living room. The little USB sat on the table like a key that had torn open the family's web of lies built over years. I knew from that moment Caroline had nowhere left to hide. When the raw footage was released, Everything exploded. Local news outlets ran the story with the clip of Caroline slapping Emma and Ethan's shouted words clearly audible afterward. The media, which had once hailed Caroline as the symbol of the perfect family, turned on her. Brands that had signed sponsorships quickly pulled out. I sat in the living room holding Emma and watched the news. Caroline's image appeared on screen, but she was no longer the glamorous sister. She looked pale, her makeup smeared, hastily leaving a building after a disastrous press conference. Reporters surrounded her. Camera flashes fired as questions rained down. Do you have anything to say about the footage? Did you hit that child? How do you explain this to your fans? Caroline said nothing. She hid her face and slipped into a car. Ethan looked at me and murmured, "See? The truth speaks for itself. We don't have to take her down, she did that herself." I had no answer. Relief and heaviness sat together in my chest. Relief that the truth was known. Heavy sorrow because that woman was still my sister. Someone I had once hoped would change. In the days that followed the public uproar, social media filled with scathing comments. "I can't believe I used to idolize her. Striking a child while posing as a role model. Disgusting." My heart goes out to Emma and Sophia. I received messages from strangers. Mothers, people who had survived family denial and cover-ups. They thanked me, saying I had made them feel less alone. I read each message with tears streaming, but they were tears of relief. My parents were different. They went completely silent. No calls, no messages, no explanations. Once everything erupted, they seemed to vanish, withdrawing from the media and cutting contact with both daughters. I understood they chose silence to try to preserve what little dignity they had left. But silence could not erase years of complicity. One afternoon I got a short email from my mother. "I'm sorry for not doing right. I don't know how to face it. Please take care of Emma." I read it over and over, unsure whether it was genuine remorse or another way of dodging responsibility. Either way, I had no energy left to probe. I chose to let it go. Ethan held me as I sat staring at the screen. "You don't need any more answers. You have your own life now and we'll build it the way we want." I nodded. For the first time in months, I felt peace. We cleared the house, removed boxes of old items we had brought from Dallas. Ethan bought a small swing for the yard and I planted roses along the fence. Each morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen window and I heard Ethan laughing with Emma. My heart felt full. Emma grew day by day. The red mark on her cheek faded and was replaced by chubby, radiant cheeks. She learned to stand, gripping the chair and wobbling forward. I knelt beside her with open arms. "Come on, Emma, come to mommy." Ethan stood behind, cheering, "You can do it, kiddo." Emma took a few tentative steps and then fell into my arms. She giggled, a bright laugh that wiped away every remaining shadow inside me. I kissed her forehead, held her close and whispered, "You are not a prop, nor someone to be used to dress up someone else's life. You just need to be you and I will always protect that." Outside, the late afternoon breeze stirred the leaves. No cameras, no harsh lights, no scripted scenes. Just us, a small, real family. Ethan sat beside me and draped his arm around my shoulders, gazing at Emma with eyes full of happiness. I rested my head on him and let the last light of day warm my face. In that moment I realized the long fight had finally led me home. There were no more cover-ups, no gaslighting, no pretense called perfect. Only true, simple love, steady and strong. Emma took a few more steps in the yard. Her laughter played like a new song that marked the start of a different life. I knew from now on she would grow up in a world where the truth would not be buried and where she would be loved properly. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or would you stand up to protect your child, even if it meant confronting your whole family? Share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear from you. And if you want to continue following our family's stories, both the love and the wounds, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.